Hello and welcome, my name is Ryan, I'm also known as RM2K Dev. Today in this video we're going to be making a super delicious cheesy potato bake. We're going to need about 10 to 12 potatoes, 65 grams of butter, a quarter cup of flour, 2.5 cups of milk, a large onion, and for the cheese I'm using 1 handful of tasty, also known as cheddar, 1 handful of mozzarella, and half a handful of shaved parmesan. Okay, I'm going to begin by dicing this onion. Just go ahead and slice the ends off. Then we can just remove the skin. Okay, let's go ahead and add a drizzle of olive oil into the pan. Okay, so now we're just going to cook these onions until they get brown. I'm cooking over high heat. Just keep mixing them so that they don't burn. We just want them to soften up so that they're not, crunchy in our meal once we've added them to our potatoes. Okay, so once your onions have browned like this, you can go ahead and turn the heat off and then move them into a small container. Now that our onions are browned, we can go ahead and peel and slice our potatoes. Okay, so with your potatoes washed and peeled, you can go ahead and use a mandolin slicer like I'm using, or if you just use a knife, it'll do the same thing. But basically go ahead and set your slices and get something that's about 5 millimeters to 1/8 of an inch. Just a nice thin wedge of potato. So as you're slicing the potatoes, just go ahead and start assembling them into a baking tray. You just want them sort of to be stacked up end to end, and we're gonna pour all of our sauce into that. So once your potatoes are all sliced and into your baking tray, go ahead and take those onions that we had before and just sprinkle them through all over the potatoes like that. Just try and work them down a little bit in there. Get some towards the bottom, some on the top. Just want to evenly distribute these onions through this potato. So back at the stove, I'm just going to throw in this block of butter. Just wait for that to melt down. Okay, so now that your butter is melted down, we're going to take a 1/4 cup of white all-purpose flour. I'm just going to dump that in, and we're going to mix. Just keep mixing. We don't want this to burn, so just keep mixing this. It's going to turn into a bit of a dough in the pan. That's exactly what we want. Okay, now with this mix, we're going to slowly add our milk, just a little bit at a time. Just keep mixing it. I'm gonna cool that pan down. Yes, it is gonna make some funny, it's gonna basically turn into a bread, but just keep working it in. It's a bit of a messy process. Keep mixing it, keep crushing down those lumps. Just keep working on it. It will turn into a dough as soon as that happens. Keep adding, keep mixing. You may need more milk depending on, what type of flour you've got, where you're from, or, depending on the humidity, just depends on the day, to be honest. Just keep adding that milk in nice and slow and keep working it into that mixture. Now I'm gonna turn the heat off. The heat is off now. I'm gonna keep adding that milk in, and I'm just gonna keep working it into this mixture. We're just trying to thin this down now. Okay, so once you've got it to this state where you've worked out all of the lumps, it's basically at a kind of a milk thick shake consistency. We're gonna go ahead and add our cheese into this. Add your cheese in and then just give it a bit of a stir. And that cheese will melt down into this mixture. You can then return the heat on, but this time just put the heat on very low. Just low, just to help that cheese melt down into this mixture. It should already be warm enough to melt it down, but if it needs a little bit of help, you can turn that heat back on. So I'm just gonna give it a mix. You get to this stage here where it is looking a little bit thick, so once you've added that cheese in, of course it is gonna thicken up, but I would like to add just a little bit more milk to mine. That's most likely because of the brand of flour that I'm using. It might be just absorbing a little bit more milk than we expected. So I'm gonna go ahead and add maybe another, let's add another 1/2 cup. I'm just measuring that out. There we go. So I've got a 1/2 cup measure here. I'm just gonna add that in. I'm just gonna do half of that for now, just to mix that up and see where we end up. But essentially what we want is a really creamy, thick, cheesy sauce. So once you're at this stage, it's nice and sort of cheesy and milkshakey. You can add some salt and pepper. The amount is up to you. I'm just gonna use about sort of 10 seconds on my salt grinder here. It's probably about maybe a 1/2 tablespoon, maybe a teaspoon. This sauce is really thickened up quite well. All that cheese has melted in. You can see it's just cheesy and globular and thick, which is exactly what we want for this type of meal. So now that my cheese sauce is ready, let's go ahead and pour that on top of our potatoes. And just try and be even with it. It is very thick, so it may have trouble going down, but we're just gonna give it a bit of a helping hand just to get in there. Just get in there and help it move its way down into your potatoes. Make sure you get right out to every corner and try not to spill it over the edges. It is still runny enough to get down there, so you don't have to worry too much. And once we heat it in the oven, it will sort of move its way down a little easier as well. But you will have to make sure that it's just kind of getting in. Okay, now finally, this step is completely optional, but I am going to do it on mine, and that's just to give it a sprinkle of breadcrumbs on top. This will just give the surface something to get a bit more crispy in the oven. And the other thing I sometimes do is just a sprinkle of garlic powder, just to give it that kind of garlic flavor. I mean, there's nothing better than butter, milk, garlic, all those kind of ingredients that come together when we're making garlic breads and things like that. So I'm just gonna put some of these breadcrumbs on top. Now they will obviously soften up in this cheese sauce and in the oven, but it just gives you that nice crispy edge. Just gives you that nice crispiness. And also just a sprinkling of garlic powder. So that right there is ready to go into the oven. Preheat your oven to 180 degrees. We're gonna put that in for about an hour, or until the potatoes are soft to your liking. Some people like their potatoes a little harder. You just come back, check it out in 45 minutes. But for me, I like my potatoes really, really soft, kind of creamy, just to go with that sauce. So an hour, 180 degrees. And if it does start to get like a little too burnt on the top, or you don't want it to be that burnt, you can go ahead and cover it or wrap it in some aluminum foil. That's completely up to you. Okay, and there we go. I've just pulled this out of the oven. You can see it looks extra crispy with those breadcrumbs on top. This is a super easy recipe you can follow along with at home. All the ingredients and quantities will be in the description of this video. For good measure, let's take a fork and just break in there and just grab one of these potatoes out. Super soft, ready to eat, ultra delicious. Let's break one off and have a bite. Super good. And there you have it. Super easy to make potato bake. I hope you've enjoyed this recipe. If you have, go ahead and leave a like on this video. Suggest any suggestions, comments, questions, and feedback in the comment section below, and I will catch you guys in the next video. Bye for now. Super delicious. Crispy edges.